Welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast. This is Kevin White, Deputy AD at Clemson University. My thoughts on leadership. We help establish the vision of the organization. As a leader, we try to embed a sense of purpose into the heart and soul of each employee, inspiring them to internalize their purpose and their role and responsibility to our organization. I strive to empower people to walk with me together as a team instead of behind me. Being a part of the NCAA Leadership Institute allowed me to understand who I was as a leader and also to further develop my skills at bringing people together to accomplish a shared set of goals. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed the episode.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown, and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast, where we highlight executive leadership in college athletics. Our guest today is Kevin Barefoot. Kevin is the Senior Vice President of Business Development at Teamworks. Greetings, Kevin. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me on.
Now, I've known you for a while, right? When I met you, you were at WinAD.
Yep.
And I don't know if I know you that well, but always a familiar face. We've talked on a couple of occasions, but this is the first time to sit down for an interview. Working at Teamworks, which is from the outside looking in, a fast-growing environment, right?
It is, yeah.
And Senior Vice President for Business Development, from what I understand, it's a sales type job, right?
Sure.
Tell us about that role.
I got the easiest job in the building, man. I get to go out and kind of evangelize for the company and the products that we have, and share all the things that we're doing, and create excitement, create demand around our products. And so business development it's sales, right? Like we're going out and selling the products that we have. But I think that the cool part about it is it's really very consultative. It's not a situation where I have a widget and I'd come to you and I'm like, Ty, I have this widget, do you want this widget, yes or no? And if you don't, then I move on. It's consultative in the sense that I got to understand what needs you have, because we have 12, 13 different products. And so at any given point in time, you might be thinking about NIL, or you might be thinking about compliance or academics or nutrition. And so I got to really take the time to understand what it is that you need and you're trying to accomplish. And then do we have a tool that can meet those needs? And so it really gives an opportunity to listen and learn and understand. And because today we work with 99% of Division I schools, and so most schools are already clients in some capacity, right? So it's just figuring out how we can help you.
What's interesting about what you're saying, consultative, I think that's the word.
Consultative.
Consultative.
Yeah. I think that's right. Maybe.
Yeah, right. Figuring out what problem that you need solved and how we can help you solve that problem, right? And a company like Teamworks, which can solve a lot of the issues, right? And if Teamworks can't, within a year or two, they've bought a company that can, right? I wonder about that mentality, because you were in sales at WinAD, right?
Yep.
And you've been in sales before that.
Sure.
Is it the same mentality, or is it like, what problem can we solve in this specific area, because that's the service we provide?
Yeah, it's different. It's definitely different. I mean, when I was at WinAD and I had prior startup tech experience, and you have one product, it's really about that one product, and so.
So is it still consultative, or is it a different mindset?
It is. Well, it's much less so. Yeah. Like, if you have a singular product or platform, the strategy is really, I want to learn enough about what you're doing so that I can try to position this product in the best way possible and really ultimately sell it, and then, there's a saying in sales that, sometimes you want to get to a know fast. So in other words, if you're not going to buy my widget, my product, I want to find out early that you're not, so I can move to the next guy, so move to the next, prospect. And so that's what I had done at, a lot of times prior to Teamworks. But again, with Teamworks, like, number one, in college athletics, you can't burn any bridges, right? And so everybody works for everybody. Everybody knows everybody. Your administrators are hopping around from school to school. And so I'm never going to be that guy that beats you up, because if the timing's not right, that's okay. And if you don't need a nutrition tool today, that's okay. I genuinely want to understand what it is your strategy is, how you're trying to get there. And if we can help you get there, then I want to be, there to help you do it.
Yeah, no, I get it. Interesting. So there is this aspect of let me help you no matter what. It's
100%.
just not as consultative because we can't provide all these services to help you, right?
Yeah, we got to add value.
You got to add value.
Particularly in a world where athletic administrators, professional organizations are trying to contain costs because there's new expenditures, right? Like in college athletics, for example, you got, revenue sharing on the horizon where schools are having to kind of go out and find millions of dollars. And so if you're an athletic leader, you're not just going to justify a spend with Teamworks because you like hanging out with Kevin Barefoot, like we got to be adding value in a really significant, measurable, and visible way.
So this is not your first experience with startups. It's actually, from what I understand about your career, most of your experiences have been with
they've all been startups. Yeah.
What was the first one? Was that right out of school, or tell me about your first experience?
Right out of college, startup tech company in the restaurant industry, and that's kind of where I got bit by the bug. Right, is like the two things that I enjoyed were tech was exciting, and this was back in 2003. Software as a service was really starting to emerge, and the great thing about tech is you can experience hyper growth, and so that was exciting. Of like you can take a company from zero to really, a fast growing entity, and the tech world the tech space is a great space for that hyper growth, and then two. Startup is just that I could come in and make a difference every day. Like there's, if you're a number employee at a big company with thousands of employees, it's hard to move the needle. But in a startup with 15 people, like I can come in and move the needle every single day. So the combination of those two things, like heavy contribution opportunity and hyper growth opportunity was what was really appealing out of school.
Yeah, that's interesting. WinAD, I was first exposed to it when I used to volunteer with Dutch Balkman. It might have been when I first was exposed to
Dutch. He's a legend.
Your face. Yeah, Dutch is a legend, 100%.
The old D1A associations. I spent a lot of time at the I think it was the Hilton Anatole
at the annual meetings and
where the meetings were going on. And I used to be the lobby lurcher, right? I'm like, I didn't know anybody in college athletics. So when we were starting WinAD, I would just show up at the D1A.
So that might be where I've known your face from, right?
That's probably it.
Because Dutch would just allow me to drive up from Waco and volunteer every year. Yeah. So I did whatever, PowerPoint, whatever you need, Dutch.
Yeah.
Does this trash need to be empty, Dutch?
Yeah.
I mean, after a while, you just did whatever. But I bring that up because I don't know any other face from WinAD.
Yeah, I did all the external stuff.
Right. And so all I knew about WinAD was your face and name. And so I wonder, how long were you with that organization?
10 years. So I was the first hire and then was there through 2020.
Okay. So 10 years, right? So when you look back at a career and you start thinking about who I am, what I do, and how what I do has impacted the organizations I've worked for, WinAD, 10 years, and if you're the first hire, I imagine the expansion of the organization, you had a lot of influence on it.
Sure.
Is that something you can tell the story of without sounding too braggadocious?
Yeah, I mean, it's fun to build stuff, it's fun to build stuff, and at WinAD, we were right place, right time, right product. It was at a time where college athletics was really exploding from a commercial standpoint, right? These TV deals were starting to get a lot bigger. There's a lot more money coming into college athletics. Athletic departments needed to run more like a business, right? So back in 2009, there were still athletic directors who were the old football coach, and that was the path for a lot of football coach retires, they become the AD. And so like back in 2009, 2010, you started seeing more professionalization of college athletic departments and more business oriented leaders coming into the space. And so we were just right place, right time, because we had a product that provided really good financial data to athletic departments to help them, make more financial oriented decisions and more data driven decisions. So we kind of caught lightning in a bottle. And then to your question, I guess, we just asked a lot of questions, man. We, there were guys like, Brad Bates at Miami of Ohio and Bubba Cunningham at the time was at Tulsa, and Drew Marichello was one of our early clients, at BU, and we just started building stuff and said, hey, this is what we have today. This is what we're thinking about doing. Is this a good idea? How do you want it to look? What should we do next? And we, a lot of times, keeping it simple is the best strategy. We just went out and asked the schools that we wanted to sell stuff to, like what they want to see next and what they want us to build, and then we just go build it. And so, keep it simple.
That's interesting. In a minute, I'm gonna ask you about getting the TeamWorks. But before we do that, I know there was a stint before WinAD. Still sales, but was that a startup or was it? I think you were selling tools.
Manufacturing. Yeah, it's a random occurrence that prior to WinAD, I was in the manufacturing space. I was literally selling metal.
Yeah. Was that a startup or was that just a company?
It was a small company. Yeah, it was a startup.
Okay.
And I woke up every day for 2.5 years and sold machined parts and castings and forgings, and it was,
which was a necessity. I see. I imagine the tools were and the parts were a necessity.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, because if you're Caterpillar, you don't you manufacture tractors and backhoes and all that stuff, but you don't manufacture the parts that go in, right? And so Caterpillar has to buy 7 million lug nuts and bolts.
Oh, wow.
And,
yeah, all the
plates
things.
and all,
Yeah.
GM, Chrysler, we sold to BMW and these big companies, all the parts that go into their finished products. And so like you're part of the machine of making all these cool products, but every day you wake up and read about metal, and it's as exciting as it sounds. And so 2.5 years in, I'm like, it was brutal. It's tough. You're just forcing yourself to go to work every day,
Right?
And out of necessity to make money and earn a living. And I think I said to you, like, no pun intended, what I learned from that job is that you can't manufacture passion.
Right.
And if you don't have passion for what you're doing, it's going to show, and then you're not going to be, you're not going to get the results you want. You're not going to achieve in the way that you want to.
Yeah, interesting. You can't manufacture passion, right? Yeah, I've learned that over the years, right?
Now the complementary statement to that is you also can't hide passion.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I think has helped me be successful in college athletics, because you can't hide it if you got it. I love what I do. I love waking up every day and reading about sports, and I love getting to know the people in the industry and observe, the changes that have taken place over the last, decade and a half. And so if people see how passionate you are, I think they have confidence that you're going to deliver on what you say, and you're going to fulfill the commitments that you make, and that you're going to work hard to achieve the outcome that you've agreed upon. Right. And so, you can't manufacture passion, you can't hide it. And it's absolutely a key ingredient to success.
Just success 100%. And then I guess you found WinAD came knocking on the door. I mean, how did you hear about? Because when this was a new concept in college athletics. So tell me how that got across the front of you, and you're like, this is what I want to do.
It fell in my lap. It was serendipitous. I was working in the manufacturing space. A buddy of mine knew I was miserable, and literally sent me a LinkedIn job posting of a stealth mode startup tech company in college sports, and said, "This sounds like it's up your alley." And I applied. It was WinAD, got the role, and then took it from there.
That's super interesting. So then you get to TeamWorks. Was that during the pandemic, or?
It was 2020. So I was at WinAD till 2020. Left there in the spring, and my path to Teamworks, I was doing consulting in the collegiate athletics space. I was consulting with tech companies on like go-to-market strategy, sales strategy. So I'm talking to athletic directors every day. This is during the pandemic, and I was just asking people like, who do you respect and admire companies? Who do you think is poised for success? And Teamworks and Influencer kept coming up. I mean, just repeatedly. It was really clear that Teamworks was in a position to be successful, and they were respected, and I frankly, I wanted to learn about the product first because I'd spent 10 years up until that point building genuine relationships with people and having passion for what we were selling. And so I wanted to learn about Teamworks because I wanted to almost check it out. I didn't want to be part of an organization that I didn't believe in the products, and I didn't believe in the mission, because I wanted to be genuine in what I was doing. And so started talking to Zach Maritas and Corey Richardson and Mark Morris, and the leaders at Teamworks. And man, the vision that Zach painted of what he wanted to do, I heard it one time, and I honestly, the time I thought to myself, if he accomplishes half of what he just laid out for me, this is going to be a fun opportunity. Great products, great people. I immediately saw the vision and was ready to dive in, because this is back in 2020, and what Zach said is like, we're going to go out and we're going to build or acquire the best products in every category that matters in elite athletics, and we're going to tie it all together and build an operating system for sports. And I was like, man, that sounds pretty cool. And again, I was like, if we do half that,
yeah, we'll be doing big things.
It turns out, he's stuck to the roadmap, and we're probably moving a little faster than I expected on the path.
Oh, that's excellent. So then this senior VP of the business development,
yeah.
Senior VP of business, is that what you got hired on in 2020, or?
I think the title at the time was like director of business development.
Okay.
So yeah, so you focus on collegiate over the first few years, and now work across North America to include pro, NA
Whatever,
Pro, NBA, MLB, NFL, yeah.
And are you approaching people who don't, when you talk about getting out of college athletics, organizations who don't, or clubs who don't use Teamworks, any form of Teamworks, trying to get them to understand all the services offered?
Sure.
And buy in? Is that part of the role?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, our product suite was really grown from the collegiate space. Like, that's where we got our start. Zach was a former student athlete at Duke. And so, some of our products don't translate to the Chicago Bears. Chicago Bears don't need an NCAA compliance tool. They don't need an academics tool, or an NIL tool, right? So some of it doesn't carry, but a lot of it does. Nutrition, performance. When you boil down what we do at Teamworks, we help athletic organizations acquire talent. We help them manage it day to day, and we help them grow talent. And so that translates to NFL, English Premier League, and also the U.S. military. We do a lot of work with U.S. military tactical, because they operate a lot like an elite athletic organization. So yeah,
the other way around, actually.
Yeah, that's right.
Athletic organizations
that's
operate
right.
like the military. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. So yeah, to answer the question, we're engaging with all forms of sports organizations.
Do you have, like, are other people who do sales, I guess, within the organization, does somehow all report up to you, or how is it structured in terms of that?
Yeah, structure wise, it varies a little bit by what kind of division you're talking about. Collegiate, myself and Mark Morris are the kind of the two guys that stuff funnels up to in North America. But we have a little different structure in collegiate, out of necessity for how we need to serve those partners versus how we might in pro. But yeah, I get to work across a lot of different facets of the business, from marketing to sales to business development.
The reason I'm asking that question is because I'm trying to find out, like, are there people that you lead? Like, how involved are you with people in the organization?
Yeah,
right?
definitely involved.
So tell us about that involvement with people within the organization.
Yeah, I think that's been the biggest growth opportunity for me at Teamworks. Working prior to Teamworks, I'd never worked at a company with more than 20 people.
Okay.
And so in all of those situations, I was mostly a lone wolf. It was like, we have these objectives. They were mostly sales objectives. We have these objectives, go out and execute. And then I would go out and build the relationships and sell the widget, and so at Teamworks, I've had the opportunity to manage people. And so that takes you out of yourself, when you have to think about, like, how do I help someone else achieve their professional goals, and how do I help them continue to learn and grow and expand, and so it's been a treat, man. It's been a great opportunity to think about the people side of it, and the strategy, and it's been a great growth opportunity.
Where are the challenges in that? If that's not something you've had to do before, now it's something new. Tell me about.
Yeah, well, there's the further you kind of move up the chain of an organization, the more HR stuff you're dealing with, the more people issues you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And it's not always a bad thing,
right?
But if you're responsible for a team, then you got to spend a lot of time, checking in, weekly meetings, syncing up on how they're doing and how they're tracking towards their goals, and do they have I think one of the things that I've learned being a leader at Teamworks is that it's important to provide clarity of purpose for the individual. Whether you're a business development person, on my team, or sales, or what we call customer engagement or customer success, like, do you know exactly what you should be doing,
right,
in order to advance the goals of the organization? And if you don't, then that's on me. So that's one of the things that I think I've definitely learned and gotten better at over time, is just providing clarity of purpose. And if everybody in the organization has clarity of purpose, and all of that initiative funnels up to achievable goals for the company, then that's when you start that's when you start seeing success for the company.
No, I agree. That's the Nick Saban philosophy. But I wonder about, because what's interesting to me is that the challenge of, right, you try to make a track runner the head of a football team, right? Whereas the track runner has been involved with themselves and hitting their goals. I know I'm helping the team, but it's really on my performance. But now I gotta help everybody else understand what their expectations are and how their expectations help the company achieve its goals. I wonder about that for you, because when you explain the expectations and how people will be evaluated by those expectations and how their role fits into the overall role of the organization, at that point, people can choose to do one of four things. They can choose to do their job. They can choose to excel at the job that they are chosen to do. They can choose not to do their job, or you or they may realize they might not have the capacity to do that job. So I wonder, you get into a situation where somebody either chooses not to do the job, or maybe they're not the person for the job. Then you got to look at, do I need to make a personnel decision here?
Sure.
And so I wonder, when you got hired on, was that a part of the role that you knew you would have to handle it? Right, and now you may find yourself in that type of role.
I don't think I anticipated it as much, just because I never been around it. I never needed to operate in that capacity. It was funny when I came on to Teamworks. Number one is as a company, we looked a lot different. We had just over 100 employees. We're in the thick of the pandemic. I think they had recently downsized, a little bit to just be conservative amidst the pandemic. And, now we're at 475 employees, and at the time we had 2 products. Now we have 13, so it looked a lot different. But when I came on board, I asked the team, like, what do you have what are you trying to solve for? Like, how can I help? Where do you have challenges? And at the time, it was in college athletics, we want to get in front of athletic directors. Like, we want to get to the C-suite. Well, I just spent 10 years, doing that at the previous stop. And so I was like, I can definitely help you there. So to your question, when I first came on board, it was just like, go out and get us in front of folks so we can
decision makers. Yeah.
So decision makers, so we can understand what they need and try to help them. And then that evolved over time with the opportunity to lead people and having to kind of evaluate what they're doing. And the cool thing about Teamworks is that people want to be here.
Yeah.
We get calls every week from administrators who are burned out, or coaches, a lot of people from the industry. People want to work in sports, number one, and then people want to work at Teamworks because of the culture and
those things.
Just last year we were awarded best place to work in sports tech, and so people want to be here. So when a lot of people want to be here, you can be choosy of
the natural vetting process of who you bring in. Yeah.
And so I've seen that firsthand over the last 4 years, man. We Teamworks is packed full of A players. Because
the Netflix syndrome, right? We can vet the people because we got the best.
Yeah, when everybody wants to be here, it creates, in a good way, pressure to be a high performer.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's a healthy environment. That's a healthy environment. And so we've your question was, I think, like,
just dealing with personnel when there may have to be a personnel decision to be made.
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
Because that's a new experience for your first year.
Yeah. I mean, if you're not, I was on a panel with Gene Smith a few years ago, and he had this great saying or line where he said, a coach should never be surprised if I fire him. And the reason is that prior to firing them, I'm going to have him in my office and say, my expectations are up here and your performance is down here. We got to close that gap, right? It really goes back to what I was saying earlier about clarity of purpose. And so Gene said, that coach should have come in my office. If I'm doing my job, should be in my office 2 or 3 times of me saying, hey, expectations are here, performance is down here. Let's close that gap. Here's what you need to do to meet the expectations that we have for you. And then if they're not doing that, everybody is aware of it. And then the coach shouldn't be surprised. And so I think that's a sound philosophy. And so as a manager, as a leader, I have to give clarity of purpose, and then I also have to give feedback. And you also have to give really candid feedback, right? If you're not giving folks candid feedback about how they're performing against your expectations, company expectations, the expectations of the role, then you're doing them a disservice. And so if they're not performing against that, then again, the conversation should get easier. The other thing I would say is, like, I'm sure you've read the book Good to Great, Jim Collins. In that book, the great companies acquire talented people and get them on the bus. It's like, get the best people you can on the bus.
Yeah.
And then once you get them on the bus, you find the right seat for them, versus saying, I have an open seat, I need to fill that seat. So a lot of times over the years at Teamworks, we would see people and say, man, that guy or that gal, they're a star. We got to get them on the bus. And then it's on us to then figure out what's the best seat for them. So we might have somebody who's really talented, but the role they're in is too small for them or too big for them, or it's not the right, and can we move them to a different spot? So we definitely do a lot of that as well. Just kind of constantly evaluating, do we have the right people on the right seat on the bus? And sometimes just internal shuffling can help you get there.
So have you found yourself having the kind of conversations that Gene Smith mentioned that he has had to have? You found yourself having those conversations in the role you're in now?
Sure. Yeah.
And the conversations where it may be, theoretically you're in the wrong seat here. We want to move you to a different seat on the bus. You find yourself having those kind of conversations over the last 4 years?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, like sales, a lot like college athletics, is a scoreboard business.
Yeah. And so it comes down to,
you're either hitting the numbers, the goals that we set for ourselves, or you're not. And so there's definitely that quantitative aspect that makes it easy to measure performance. But But also if, it's not, I think good leaders don't just tell their team, you're not hitting the number, you're not doing, like, it should be, what resources do we need? How should we rethink our strategy? What do we need to do as a group to get there, right? It's not just, it can't just be you're underperforming. It's got to be, again, like really clear communication of, here are the steps that I think you need to take to get there. But also, do we have the right strategy in place? Do we have the right resources in place? Do you have everything, all the tools that you need, right? And if you're giving people the right tools, the right strategy, the right resources, clarity of purpose, and they know what they need to go do, like, that's where, if they're not doing it, then it becomes pretty easy to identify.
I think that's excellent, and it's excellent experience. I will say, in your career, say you go off and you become a CEO of some company, the experience that you're having, what I call the Netflix syndrome of all high-level people, and we're vetting high-level because many people want to work
Sure.
here. When you get to the rest of the world, it's not going to be as easy, because most of the world are people who are happy with being average, right? The environment is not full of overachievers. And so I would cut my teeth and learn as much as you can in that role of dealing with people and having those tough conversations, because when you get out in the world, you'll probably end up having to have more of that. And it's actually a depressing thought. But when you understand that you have overachievers and you have average people, and they don't necessarily always get along, but any organization is going to have a mix of both that have to figure out how to make it great. But the last question I have for you is, looking at the through line of your career, it's easy to say that the through line of your career is sales, right? And helping businesses grow. But if you have to think a little deeper than that, what would you say the thing that you have done that has impacted all the organizations and impacted your life and the people around you since you started on your professional career? What is that?
It's a good question. I think it's just relationships.
Okay.
I think it's
the process of building and maintaining relationships.
Yeah, like when I'll go, college athletics specifically. When I got into athletics, I thought to myself, man, I've made it into college sports. Everybody that I interact with, I'm going to treat like I'm going to know them for the next 30 years. One of my best friends in the industry is Ed Scott at Memphis. When I met Ed, he was the assistant AD of something at Binghamton University. You know what I mean? When I met Graham Neff at Clemson, he was the assistant AD of business at Middle Tennessee State University. When I met Ren Baker, who's a good friend of mine, he was the AD at Northwest Missouri State, and I could keep going.
Yep.
All those guys that I met, I didn't know that they were going to be the leaders of our industry today. I treated them like I was going to know them for the next 30 years. And so that means that when I make decisions about how our business relationship together, I'm going to do right by them, right? Because I'm going to know them for the next 3 decades. When I, send them a note or a text or because they've had a tough situation on their campus, right? I'm thinking about building that relationship, for the long term. And if you approach it like that and you build just like really authentic, meaningful, lasting relationships with people, like the rest of it kind of takes care of itself, and so I think that's been a key part of it. And I would say it goes back to the passion, like if you have passion for what you're doing, you can't hide it. People see it, people gravitate towards it. You can build those genuine relationships, but there's so much in our world today that's highly transactional. Everybody lives on, the consumption of 3-second video clips and, emails and
all those things.
It's like, I think most of us gravitate towards authenticity and being able to build a relationship with people. So I think if you can do that, man, you got an advantage. And that's what we try to, instill in our team too, is you gotta think long-term and act long-term, and good things are going to happen.
Yeah. I find that very interesting. The thought of the relationships I build them as if they're going to be 30-year relationships. I find that very interesting. Well, Kevin, this has been an excellent conversation, and we really appreciate you joining us here on the One Question Leadership Podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, man. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. That was Kevin Barefoot. He is the Senior Vice President of Business Development for Teamworks. And of course, I am Ty Brown with One Question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today.
This episode of the One Question Leadership Podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.